I don't know whether this has become an international news story yet, but we've had elections in Germany. Not the big federal elections, the Bundestagswahl, in which Germans elect the parties that then decide on who's to become Bundeskanzler. That election is going to take place next year. We've had state elections, the Landtagswahlen, in 3 out of 16 German states, the results of which may very well be representative of a German-wide trend. I'm going to discuss the outcome of these elections and go on a bit of a rant about German media, politics and public opinion as a result of that. First of all, what happened exactly? The biggest winner of the elections was the Alternative für Deutschland, Alternative for Germany, or AfD, a conservative party that hasn't had any parliament seats up until now. It's a party that was founded in 2013 as an alternative to the Christdemokratische Union, Christian Democratic Union, or CDU, and it was and still is very critical of the euro. After the AfD had become increasingly more friendly with the Pegida movement, many former party members, including the founder Bernd Lucke, left the AfD. The new AfD, which is noticeably more conservative these days, managed to gain popularity by being very anti-refugees, a position which is shared by a noticeable amount of Germans, while established parties tend to shy away from discussing the issue critically. As a result of that, AfD sympathizers, like Pegida demonstrators before them, were collectively condemned as Nazis and populists in the public sphere. The latter I agree with. The first, however, is an example of a politically fatal, knee-jerk reaction that is partially to blame for their success. While neo-Nazis are in fact involved in Pegida as well as the AfD, the majority of the party's supporters certainly are not neo-Nazis. Rather than taking the concerns of the moderate supporters seriously and attempting to deconstruct their arguments through having an actual debate, German politicians, the media and the general public chose the easy route of condemning, ignoring and ridiculing. Back to the elections. Traditional, or at least acceptable coalitions, meaning coalitions without the AfD, are easy to achieve in Rheinland-Pfalz and Baden-Württemberg. Nevertheless, the AfD rose in its popularity in both states, going from 0 to 12.6 and 0 to 15.1%. The most devastating blow was dealt to the established parties in Sachsen-Anhalt. Especially the traditional Sozialdemokratische Partei, Social Democratic Party or SPD, shrunk from 20 to 10.6%. Whatever the coalition government may turn out to be, if the AfD is going to be kept out of the government, the winner of the election, the CDU, needs to include Die Linke, the left party, which is a left-wing alternative to the SPD, which, as you may imagine, isn't exactly a natural fit. What do these results mean? The general consensus in the media seems to be that the election of the AfD is a form of protest against the established parties. While I agree with that on the surface, the problem runs deeper than that. Not only is it a protest against established parties, it's a protest against established politics as a whole. The CDU is becoming increasingly less electable for conservatives, just like the SPD has been unelectable for left-wingers for years now. Both parties are fighting over the so-called middle, voters which don't already have a clear political commitment. You might call them swing voters. The actually conservative and social democratic voters have been taken for granted for over a decade now, and the two major parties don't pander to them anymore. A brief historical overview in order to explain the political shift that the two traditional parties, CDU and SPD, have made. Confronted with raising numbers of people without jobs, the SPD cut social welfare dramatically in 2005. While I think that this policy was necessary and in fact proven right if we compare Germany's economical status today to other European countries and how they coped with the various financial crises, it's the sort of policy that should have been enforced by a CDU. As a result of this, a left-wing schisma happened and Die Linke was founded in 2007. Die Linke is a fusion of two parties. The Partei Deutscher Sozialisten, Party of German Socialists, the successor of the Sozialistische Einheitspartei, Party of Socialist Unity or SED, which ruled the Socialist German Democratic Republic until 1990. The other party was the Wahlalternative Soziale Gerechtigkeit, Voting Alternative Social Justice, which was founded by SPD dissidents in 2005. The CDU, which used to claim that the only thing to its right was the wall, lost voters to both the extremist Nationaldemokratische Partei, National Democratic Party or NPD, and the AfD due to a liberal shift. However, the last word hasn't been spoken yet, and there is tremendous tension within the party in regard to issues such as gay rights and, of course, the current refugee situation. The Green Party, which was founded by former 68 protesters, prospered from the failures of both the CDU and the SPD. Having moved towards the middle themselves politically, while to some degree maintaining their ecological portfolio, they had become increasingly more electable for moderate conservatives. The only voters that couldn't find their views represented anywhere were moral traditionalists. And that is where the AfD enters the stage. I'm going to discuss the following points. 1. They are anti-Euro. 2. They are anti-refugee or more specifically anti-Islam. 3. They are morally conservative. 4. They are anti-establishment. Point 1. Anti-Euro. The Euro is the child of the CDU as well as the SPD. The idea was to strengthen European cooperation on both a political and an economic level. The flip side is that Germany, as the current economical powerhouse within the Eurozone, is the country paying many bills. Combine that with the fact that prices have been going up steadily and Germany's social programs having been cut, that makes the Euro pretty unpopular with your average German. Anti-refugee. The rather impressive amount of German solidarity with refugees that you could witness both nationally as well as internationally has been used in order to create a wrong narrative. Federal Chancellor Angela Merkel used this situation to boost her popularity with non-conservative voters. Images of her with refugees seemed like good PR. However, she underestimated the effect that these selfies would have on future waves of immigrants. Then the media joined in, systematically downplaying the risks connected to mass immigration, especially from the Muslim world. Even otherwise hardline right-wing publications felt inclined to create an overly positive image. Especially the New Year's Eve events highlighted the conspiracy of silence that German media had all too willingly agreed to. However, not only the media is to be blamed for this failure. Both public opinion and politically correct politics made it incredibly difficult for thoughtful voices to be heard. The habit of downplaying problems connected to mass immigration and relativizing them was reinforced by right-wing attempts to create false narratives themselves. Both sides lied, and they did it systematically. Narratives mattered more than actual news. People in the middle, those who tried to gather objective information, were the losers in this. The only winners were right-wing outlets and parties like the AfD. Although not honest themselves, they at least exposed mainstream lies that were obvious to many people. And that helped them tremendously. As opinion polls show, of the people who voted for the AfD, very few did it because they actually liked the party's ideas. Most of them did it because they were disappointed with the other parties and the current system, including many who hadn't been voting in previous elections. Point 3. Morally conservative. There definitely is a chunk of the population that is morally conservative and doesn't see their values represented by the CDU, which has become more and more liberal. While I don't agree with these voters, I understand that moral conservatism does have a place in a democracy. The fact that the traditional conservative party doesn't represent those voters anymore creates a lasting void that is filled by a party like the AfD. Anti-establishment. This is pretty much the Donald Trump angle to the whole story. The fact that a party is not submitting to politically correct speech alone is appealing to a lot of people because it creates the illusion of honesty, which, let's face it, is rare with politicians. On the bright side, German voters chose not to elect the extreme NPD into power. Public distaste of false narratives and dishonesty doesn't go far enough to vote for Nazi apologists. In that regard, we can count ourselves lucky. In conclusion, although a right-wing surge isn't a positive thing in my opinion, the fact that this problem has more or less been created by the mainstream institutions as well as the general public makes it easier to cope with. Media outlets need to stop hiding stories deemed too hot for the public to know and instead do some factual reporting. Their attempt to act as if there were no risks whatsoever connected to mass immigration is going to hurt the very cause of ensuring public solidarity in the long run. We have to be honest about the fact that immigrants do tend to commit more crimes than your average citizen. We have to admit that the sexual mass harassment on New Year's Eve was unprecedented in this country and that there is a link to the cultural background of the perpetrators. Because how else can we prevent this from happening again? And why should we lie about it in the first place? These problems are in no way new, and Germany has in fact a rather good track record when it comes to integration. And most importantly, an honest dialogue about the refugee crisis needs to take place. Many people in this country are worried. Some of them overestimate the threat that Muslim immigration poses to a secular society. But instead of shouting them down and calling them Nazis, we need to discuss the actual issue at hand. Whatever the outcome of that discussion is going to be, it's better than allowing political fringe groups to be proven right. I'm going to upload a video on Muslims in Germany very soon, by the way, so stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed me talking about German politics for a change. I'm the thoughtful contrarian. Feel free to rate, comment, share and subscribe, and as always, cheers.